Hi folks, welcome to a discussion about the use of key performance indicators in production lines. Maybe you know about the scene. You have staff and you have to motivate them to fulfill the goals better and better, improvingly, and to reach targets like quality, like cost, like fulfillment time and whatever. The question always is, what are the right key performance indicators to use, and what are you intending to answer by applying key performance indicators? I show you just a little list what you can achieve when using key performance indicators, such as create transparency, improve objectivity, or whatever, to present complex issues in an understandable way. Well, we can go through this list, but I think you know all that issues quite well. And the remaining question always is, what is the right key figure to answer that question, and also, of course, to give a target to your employees? Let's summarize. Key performance indicators as a management tool are used for controlling processes or maybe giving targets, and of course to provide and benchmarking to have a comparison between your production area and maybe other plants of customers or competitors or even suppliers. That always gives you information and helps you improving your state of production, your state of producing. The remaining issue is, what are your strategic goals? And of course, how does your process, your production process look like? Because from both sides, up from above and coming up from the process line, you have to decide on which key performance indicator you are getting focused, which is helping you to reach your target, and of course, which is helping to motivate your employees, because they have to understand and they have to accept that goal as the right one, and of course they have to fulfill these goals. Usually we have a list of key performance indicators we find in production line, such as effectivity, loading, employee hours, budget, or factor costs. All these figures usually are resource oriented because they mirror just what you are doing and how much input you're using to get that output. But I think there is also another list that's quite interesting, because these figures are result oriented, such as delivery reliability, the quality, the stock level we use for producing our products, the throughput time it takes to fulfill the order, and of course, finally, and maybe most important, of course, the costs per unit. So please tell me which one you're using and which one is the best figure to take out, and maybe also take out a few of that. But if you have a contradiction between one and another figure, which are you to follow? And maybe, of course, management is able to decide. But if you give it to your employees, they will decide on their own, and I would guess they take the best for themselves. So it's always the figure that helps them to fulfill the target, but maybe it's not in the sense of the management. To find out what key figure we should use, let's have a look at a KPI hierarchy. So you can see we build it up from level 7, that's the lowest base level, so we can assume that figures that shows us what's happening in operation line, such as how many interruptions you have while working on employee, machine or material view. And of course, are there missing instructions? And whatever it is, it doesn't affect the total shift time, but of course our productive time. So in the end, we have different factor costs and of course the number of customer orders which can be produced differ. The product complexity is of course a great impact on our result. So if you have lower complexity, it's much easier, we can do a better quality and more products in time. And we also get, after all, different waiting times, transport times, setup times in our production. So it depends how good our production is able to manage that issue to speed up and get a shorter order throughput time after all. In the end, we use less resources and we get a better effectivity, and of course we get lower production costs, we get a higher loading, a better stock level, and after all better cost per piece. And the shorter our order throughput time is, we get better lead times to the customer and our delivery reliability improves. So let's mark the key figures we usually use in production lines as we discussed before. These were factor costs, the use of resources, a budget, loading, stock level, effectivity, order throughput, and delivery time, cost per piece, and lead time. The question is, which one we should take out of these? In the end, there always is a conflict, because if we take more than one key figure, we may have different messages. So which one to follow? Which key figure is more important? Which key figure tells us what we should do? Again, management may be able to decide and say, okay, we take a reasonable mix out of that. But if you give it to your staff in a production line on operation level, it's hard to follow for them. What should they take? And maybe they get different decisions, and after all they decide to do what's better for them, what's better in their sense to do. So finally, we should try to take out one figure that helps us to cover most of the interests we follow in production. The question is, which key figure is able to help us? Which key figure may help us fulfilling that target? So let's come back to our list of figures and see what's happening in our hierarchy. Factor costs, for example, are on a much too low level to help us. So that means we should take them out of our further discussion. The same is for the use of resources. Budget, it's just an input, but it doesn't tell us what's happening, and of course our personnel is not affecting that. That's also the same for the loading. Of course, if we have a higher loading, it helps us to produce at lower cost per piece, but of course we get also higher stock level. So there is a connection in between these figures, and if we come back to effectivity, stock level and cost per piece, we also cover that effect. Most important, following that discussion and this argumentation, I think, is stock level, effectivity, and order throughput time. So as you can see here, if we take that three or one of that three key figures, we are able to cover the whole hierarchy of figures. So that helps us to discuss, one of that figure should be the right for managing production line. But what is it? And this discussion I would like to follow with you in the next parts of this webinar. And to be honest, when discussing that, we get a lot of very interesting findings. So don't miss it, and I hope to see you again. Thank you very much.